Styles of recovery. We have, how many of you believe there are, let's talk about styles of addiction for a second. How many of you believe there are people who initiate and sustain addiction and they don't have any contact with any other drug addicts? It's solo addiction, all by myself. I initiate it, I sustain it. I don't have any of that riffraff around me. Anybody come to mind? Physicians. Physicians, the Michael Jacksons of the world, can initiate and sustain long-term addictions without significant contact with a culture of addiction. And we call them it's an acultural style of addiction. They're not involved in the language and rituals of the life. Now, we got another group of people who are bicultural. These are people who can pass. They can mask their addiction because they can function very well in the mainstream society. And Friday night comes, and they jump into the telephone booth and change clothes and come out the other side and go to the other life, right? In the cocaine years, you saw a lot of this, right? A lot of them folks doing their Monday to Friday, but look out on Friday, Saturday. I mean, this was a whole, and they were deep in the life on the weekends, bicultural, right? We also have people, and we see a lot of these in treatment, who were practically born in the culture of addiction. And some were literally born in the culture of addiction. Grew up in the culture of addiction. Don't know how to function outside a culture of addiction. Don't even have the language skills that will allow them to deal with civilians or normies or earthlings, as they're sometimes referred to in recovery circles. What about those people? I'm going to tell you later, people who are culturally enmeshed, deeply enmeshed in addiction, may need an equally enmeshed culture of recovery to initiate and sustain recovery. That we need to not only treat the addiction inside them, we got to pull them out of this culture of addiction, and we got to enmesh them in a culture of recovery that meets all those same needs. Now, I can treat the interpersonal stuff with Cassandra in an inpatient program. But if she's deeply involved in that culture, and I now hug her and give her a graduation chip, and she walks out the door to that culture, what are her odds if I have not given her another world? So when we shift to recovery management discussion this afternoon, the issue is going to be not just how do we open a pathway of recovery, how do we create a world some people can recover in? Are you with me? I'm talking about a physical, cultural world. What do you think the recovery fellowships have done for so many years? They are that culture. Now, let's talk about recovery. In the recovery culture, can I have a person who initiates and sustains recovery with no contact with other recovering people? Absolutely. We find them all the time. We find them in household surveys of all varieties. But they're unlikely to be that person who is enmeshed in a drug culture, agree? They're also lower problem severity and complexity. But we find it's an atypical, it's called acultural style, we call it solo recovery. Bicultural. Bicultural are people who can go in and out of AA or NA or WFS culture, but then on Monday they can go to work. They can deal with civilians. They got all the social skills to fully function out there and pass. You hear me? Nobody's going to, they don't even have, if they don't want to disclose, ain't nobody in the world going to suspect them as a person in long-term addiction recovery. And then we got people, do we have people whose whole world is a world of recovery? They eat, breathe, spend 24 hours a day inside that culture. And you know what? Thank God they may need to for a while. Because that may be their only shelter to relapse, is total immersion in that culture. And the recovery culture is aware of this. One of the things that will happen with this, I remember a point I was meeting with a sort of recovery mentor, and I'd hit with sort of this existential tough patch, and I was going in expecting him to tell me that I needed to get back and hit more meetings than I was already hitting. And he said, you know what? You need less meetings rather than more meetings. We're going to start a new program for you. It's going to be called the Get a Life program. What was he trying to do? He's trying to move me from a culturally enmeshed person in recovery to a bicultural. He said, once you get to be bicultural, you can choose. But I want you to have the choice. Right now, you're hiding. Right? You're hiding out. You're avoiding all those temptations out there, but you're only half well. Now that you're well, go change the damn world and get out there with them people. And then when you feel weak and vulnerable, get back here for your safety net.